It started like any other college year. I was nervous moving to a new city, starting over. But that all changed the moment I stepped into the apartment I'd be sharing with my new roommate. The place was nice, though a bit costly for my liking. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living room with wooden floors. Everything looked perfectly normal, except for one thing: the second bedroom, the one I'd never seen my roommate enter. At first, it wasn't a big deal. I was an introvert and didn't mind the solitude. I unpacked my things, settled into my side of the apartment, and noticed the strange silence that seemed to hang in the air. The kind of silence that's heavy, like it could swallow you whole. I figured it was just because I was adjusting to my new environment. My roommate, let's call him Ethan, was someone I had never really seen. Not properly, anyway. I knew he lived in the apartment, but aside from the occasional glimpse of his back as he left the apartment, he remained a mystery. We never exchanged words, not even the usual pleasantries. He always kept to himself, and I never made an effort to approach him. Whenever I passed by his room, the door was always closed. I wasn't sure if he was shy or just wanted his space, but either way, I didn't think much of it. It was his business, and mine was to stay out of his. But the longer I stayed, the more odd things started to happen. I'd come home after a long day of classes to find the apartment eerily still, as if no one had been there at all. No signs of life, no empty cereal bowls, no shoes kicked off by the door, not even a discarded jacket. Nothing. The bathroom lights would sometimes flicker, and I'd hear strange noises at night, like something being moved or shuffled around. But every time I checked, there was no one in the apartment except for me. One evening, I was sitting in the living room, flipping through my textbooks when I heard footsteps coming from the hallway. I stood up expecting to see Ethan, but when I walked toward the sound, I found the hallway empty. The door to Ethan's room was closed. That was nothing new. His door was always closed. But this time I felt an odd tension in the air. Something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Curiosity got the best of me, and I gently knocked on his door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time, but still nothing. A strange chill seemed to seep from under the door, and I began to feel uncomfortable. After a few seconds, I decided to leave him alone and retreated back to my room. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to shake the feeling that something was off. I kept hearing the same muffled noises again, like furniture shifting in the dark. It wasn't until the clock struck midnight that I finally heard it. A soft, distinct sound, like a whisper coming from Ethan's room. I froze. The whispers grew louder, becoming more urgent, like someone was trying to get my attention. I grabbed my phone and hesitated. Was I imagining things? Was I just being paranoid? The whispers suddenly stopped, replaced by the distinct sound of someone breathing heavily. It wasn't the kind of breathing you hear when someone is just tired or asleep. It was strained, ragged, almost like a sigh of frustration, and it was coming from the other side of the wall, the direction of Ethan's room. I couldn't take it anymore. I got out of bed and walked cautiously to the door of Ethan's room. My hand hovered over the doorknob. I was terrified, but something inside urged me to open it. Slowly, I twisted the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, empty room. The bed was unmade, and there was a faint smell of something stale. The window was open, letting in a cold breeze that rustled the curtains. But there was no Ethan. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of the scene. The air was unnaturally cold, and the silence felt oppressive, like something was waiting in the shadows. That's when I noticed it. An old photograph on the desk. It was a picture of Ethan, but his face was distorted, blurred as if someone had rubbed the photo in a way that made the features melt. I turned to leave, but as I did, I heard a soft voice behind me. "Why are you here?" My heart skipped a beat. I whipped around, but the room was still empty. My chest tightened with dread as I stared at the space where Ethan should have been. I ran back to my room, slamming the door behind me. My breath came in ragged gasps as I locked the door, trying to calm myself. I thought I must have imagined it, but the feeling of being watched didn't fade. It only grew stronger. For the rest of the night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every whisper, every faint movement made me jump. When the sun finally rose, I rushed out of the apartment, desperate to escape the oppressive atmosphere that had taken over. The next day, I decided to visit the landlord and ask about Ethan. I needed answers. The landlord looked confused when I asked about him. She seemed to hesitate before answering. Ethan? Who Ethan? You're the only one who's been renting that room. I froze. What do you mean? He's been living with me for the past few weeks. The landlord cut me off. There was no one else. Your lease is for a one-bedroom apartment. There's never been a second tenant. Are you sure you haven't just been imagining things? I felt a wave of nausea hit me. I couldn't breathe. Everything, the whispers, the footsteps, the strange occurrences, suddenly made sense. Ethan wasn't real. He had never been real. But then, who had been in the apartment with me all this time? Who had I been sharing space with? I rushed back to the apartment, my mind racing. When I entered, the place was exactly as it had been before, silent, empty. But this time there was a note on the kitchen table. It read, simply, "I'm still here." The ink was smudged, as if written in a hurry, and there was something eerie about the way it was left, almost like a message from someone or something that had never truly existed. I don't stay there anymore. I moved out as soon as I could. Now living in another city, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still feel his presence standing just behind me, waiting.